So what Meg and I are talking about is the imposter syndrome. And the question that we had for you on it, because we all have it, we all suffer from it. And I always think it's such a good sign when it comes up because it means you're stretching. What does Carl say to the imposter when he shows up in your head?
Yeah. Super good question. I'm just trying to think. Well, it's too far away. So this will make sense in a minute. So the imposter syndrome for me, this has been a lifelong struggle. And I started recognizing it maybe, in fact, the most, other than my house column that did the best at the times was my column on the imposter syndrome. So this is something that you're not alone. Like we all go through it. And the way I've dealt with it is I've gone through phases and I've seen different. So a lot of people deal with imposter syndrome like it's a strain of fear, and they take the approach of like, get out of here, fear, like that sort of macho thing, like kick fear in the teeth, like that kind of thing. And I can't remember if it was Elizabeth Gilbert or Brene Brown that first taught me this, taught all of us this, not like she taught me personally, but yeah. Pardon? Yeah. So backseat, that whole thing. But I love the idea of recognizing that fear, generally speaking, fear has served me at times. I actually know specific instances in my life where fear has kept me alive. So it's not somebody I want to kick in the teeth. So that was the first pillar. And then the next pillar was I started to realize that feeling. So I can remember like when the book came out, and one of them was like, I remember when I first spoke to the biggest audience I had spoken to up to this point was 3,500 people, and it was in South Africa. And so South Africa, it was in Cape Town, and the car was taking me there, and there were signs like Carl Richards event, and I was like, this is what is going on? And I go out to do the warm up, and it's a 3,200 seat sort of like theater style. And I was just like, no, there's no, like somebody doesn't. So I started, for a long time, that feeling shows up and you don't recognize it. It's an underlying current, and it feels like fear. And what we're trained to do with fear is stop. And so we think that feeling is a stop sign. So the step one is to recognize how it feels to you. And so once I recognized how it felt, I then realized, like, wait, that feeling has been around every time I've done anything cool. Mm-hmm. I started to realize, I sort of like had almost like flashcards. I was like pictures, snapshots of cool events. I was like, oh, wait, when I got married, I remember that. When my first child was born, I remember, in fact, all of my children, I remember that. The start line of a mountain bike race, I remember that. Every adventure I've ever done, I remember that. It's the same feeling. It's exactly the same feeling. So I was like, wait. So I almost, these like snapshots of it was like everybody who was in the room, and there was one person in the room every time. And that one person, so I personified imposter syndrome at that point. I was like, that's imposter syndrome. So then one last piece of the story is in my studio in my office in Utah. My door was over my left shoulder. When I'd sit down every Thursday to draw the sketch for the Times, I'd take out this card stock and a Sharpie, right? Like there was no Adobe, whatever, like it was card stock and I would draw the thing. And then when I get done with it, and it would normally take like hundreds of pieces of paper, and there'd be like a stack of paper all over the office. I'd just throw them over my shoulder. And then when I get it right, I would scan it in a Fujitsu Snap scanner. So like I didn't have a flatbed scanner. I didn't have there was no light coming through the mirror windows. There's no music. I'd scan it in, and then just about the time I'd go to hit send to my editor, I would sense somebody over at the door. I had a glass door to the outside. And I'd look over and I would see, and it was always the same person. And this person was in all those pictures too. It turned out it was Mr. Burns, Homer Simpson's boss. Remember? And the reason I was looking to see is Justin Castelli sent me a Mr. Burns bobblehead after he heard the story. So it's right there in the thing. So I like Mr. Burns, and Mr. Burns would come in and go, right when I was about to hit send, he'd go, What's going on in here? What? Is that a Sharpie? Is that a flat? Is that a snap scan? That's cute. You're a kid from the hills in Utah. What? They're gonna totally find out when you send that one in. It's over, buddy. Like and then the other thing he would do is there was a big switch, like one of those giant train switches, and it said on, off, and it was labeled Carl's career. And it was on, and he would reach up and grab it, and he would just look at me and laugh and flip it to off. That was like that was what went on. And so then I started to realize, like, hey, you do this every time. Like, you come every time. And in fact, the ones that I'm the most scared about, that you come in the hardest, often are the ones that do the best. And so I was like, bring it. Like, now when I feel that feeling, I just think, hey, man. Like, and I personified him as Mr. Burns, a man. You can personify him as whoever you want, an animal, a dog, or whatever. Like, I'm just like, hey, I'm glad you're here. Let's get to work. So to me, it's flipped the whole thing. It takes a minute to go, oh, that tightness in the chest I'm feeling right. Oh, I got it. That's right. It's just, no one's going to die. It's just Mr. Burns back because we're about to do something cool. There you go. That's the story.
I love it.